In this edition of The Way It Is, the fourth of our special reports on how we love the land, the new, wasteful, often destructive, but nevertheless exciting shape of the cities. Our reporter, Ken Foley. Let's go.
That's one way to build cities, and most of tonight's report deals with what we do to the land and ourselves when we build cities that way. But there's another way. Back downtown in the old urban centers, we're building the cities of Canada for the second time. First, we knocked down the original cities, square blocks and sometimes square miles at a time. Then we build them up again, nearly always of vastly larger building blocks than anything we used the first time around. Do we do all this well, or do we do it badly? That's the starting point for this inquiry. And for the answer, we went to the lady over there, the one who's trying to edge her way into the traffic on Toronto's University Avenue. She's an American who moved to Canada last summer, Jane Jacobs, author of the definitive book called The Death and Life of Great American Cities, and quite possibly the best qualified critic in the world to do for you what she does now, review the kind of job we're doing as we build Toronto and Montreal for the second time.
I hate University Avenue. Toronto's a very refreshing city to come to from the States. It's all full of romanticism and quirks and surprises and ingenuity, particularly in the way outdoor space is used. In Markham Street Village, the way those front yards of former residences, which are now shops, have been made into really wide sidewalks. Marvelous for window shopping, for sitting around in. This is another aspect of this Toronto genius for using bits of outdoors. This is not usual in most cities today. This isn't a dead city. There doesn't seem to be much creativity at the top. It seems to me that Toronto has kind of a split personality, a civic schizophrenia. On the one level, there's the spirit of, individuals and small groups who do things, what you might call the vernacular spirit. This is all very informal, ingenious, quite romantic, and full of fun, a great deal of fun. It seems to me that the official spirit of Toronto is stamp out fun, pompous, impressed with mediocrity if it's very, very big and expensive. In Montreal, I have a feeling that both the official spirit of the city, what's understood as the top civic kind of thing, is changing, and also the spirit of the individual citizen of Montreal. They didn't show the spirit of fun and adventure and adaptation of the city in little ways in the past. But now, the official city seems to be taking much more cue than in the past from what the ordinary citizens want, and in turn, the ordinary citizens, I gather, are losing some of their suspicion of the government, the establishment. Probably the biggest single menace to Toronto right now is the Spadina Expressway. The minute you take an expressway into, not up to, but into the dense part of the city, then you have very large numbers of cars coming on and going off at certain restricted points. At those points, you get into terrible traffic jams. The traffic has to fan out right there into the city streets. Now, suppose the Spadina Expressway comes down to Bloor. You have to sort out at that point cars which want to go nearby and ones which really want to go a considerable distance east on Bloor. To sort those out, you have to have the Crosstown Expressway. That must follow. Now, these expressways don't meet each other at nice right angles the way they look on maps. They are like plates of spaghetti. They have to have interchanges. Every expressway that's built produces its bottlenecks. And if they're to be countered, it requires more expressways. It also requires narrowing the sidewalks and cutting down trees to widen streets, doing away with any little random parks or sitting areas that interfere with the traffic, making many, many more parking lots, the whole city thins down and is more and more given over to cars. Everything's been sacrificed to the car, so why come in? Well, now in Montreal, they have an expressway that comes across the river right to the downtown, and it halts there. And it does fan out its traffic right there, instead of carrying it any farther. Another expressway is going to be built more or less at right angles to it, but again, it's not so bad because it's not as if they were doing this at St. Catherine Street, main shopping area, nor is it as if they're doing it at the riverfront. Montreal is one of the few cities that has resisted putting an expressway across its riverfront. And that gives it a lot of future leeway for waterfront development that most other cities don't have anymore. I think most people in Toronto recognize that the ravines are a very unusual feature. Well, what is very likely to happen to the ravines if the official minds have their way entirely is that they'll all become highway corridors and poison alleys. They get all full of exhaust from the cars, to say nothing of the general roar of them, so that the illusion that you can run expressways through them and still use the slopes as parks is, it's just not so, you know. They're pretty well ruined for any use once they get a high-speed, heavily used expressway through them. I notice frequently criticism that Montreal has done so much building, including Expo and very grand buildings, and there doesn't seem to be much slum clearance. I think it's one of the most fortunate things about Montreal that it hasn't gone in for slum clearance, because the only ways so far that slum clearance has been done pile up new problems faster than they get rid of old ones. There's one thing you can see so far, which is a combination of rehabilitated buildings and new ones. But they're still not satisfied with this, and they're still experimenting. Every city needs to be making this kind of experiment. Most of them talk about it, but Montreal really is trying to do this. Another interesting thing that's been done there is the old part of the city was, of course, once the old commercial and financial heart of the city. And then as the city moved northward and westward, it went downhill. It was more or less abandoned. Instead of wiping that out, what's happening is rejuvenation that's going on there, plus encouragement by the city of the existing downtown to move somewhat southward and eastward so that the two are linking up, and there will be a fairly continuous fabric of city. This is very unusual. I don't know of many cities that have ever succeeded in doing this in Toronto. I think that people in charge don't trust their own instincts. They're trying to do something that they think is proper and grand and right. It's often imitative. University Avenue is imitative of many such city beautiful malls in other cities. Toronto Dominion Center is imitative of office buildings on a platform, put the people underground. And the surface is really quite dead and dull. Oh, it's what people loosely call the establishment, I guess. Insurance companies who invest a great deal of money in large building projects. Large real estate owners and operators who make decisions what they'll use the land for. The French of Montreal almost certainly don't have the access to investment money, development money, that English-speaking people do. They clearly think they're discriminated against as far as access to capital is concerned. And I'm inclined to think they're right. People usually do know whether they're discriminated against or not. people know these things about themselves and about their group or class. The people who are doing the discriminating are the people who are able to make the decisions on where loans and investments go. You can see the result in the fact that very few growing, important businesses are owned by French or are being developed by the French. You can see it in another way where the French parts of the city, east of St. Lawrence, simply isn't as prosperous as the English-speaking areas. And this prosperity comes indirectly from, are you producing? Are you developing? You can just see in the stores, in the houses, in everything that there is less prosperity there. When people doing the humble kinds of work in a city can't get access to capital, then their work itself becomes a dead end. There may be money for sophisticated technology, but at the other end of the scale, there's abysmal stultification. This is why in all North American cities today, problems are piling up unsolved. Economic and social discrimination have an awful lot to do with it.